Hi, welcome to episode 12 of the Weekly Wave. I'm Matthew Lyons.
And I'm Aaron Johnson.
Our guest here today is Abington High School principal and author, Dr. Teresa Sullivan. How are you, Dr. Sullivan?
I'm fine, Matt. Aaron?
So you recently, well, not recently, but you wrote this book, The Alternative Truth. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. It was fairly recently. It came out of a PhD program. So part of a PhD program is to write a dissertation. So it's equal to about a book. It's 200 to 300 pages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Takes about 3 or 4 years to do.
Wow.
So I started a PhD program a few years back, going nights to UMass Dartmouth. They had it's actually a PhD in educational leadership and social justice. So you can see how those two sort of combine in the book, I think, a little bit. So I had a couple years of classes under my belt that sort of got me interested in the particular topic. But around the discussion of social justice and public schools. Interesting enough, in the coursework that I was in, the program I was in, I was the only principal.
Really?
So
Wow.
I think the discussions we had on a regular basis for 4 years at night with my colleagues and my peers, they were just shocked by that goes on in school. A lot of them were adjunct professors or in private sector, and interested in the social justice component of ed leadership. So I think understanding that so much of the public doesn't really know about student issues and what goes on in schools sparked, my interest in saying, what if I publish, the dissertation? And I tell you that in a good lesson for all of you and for me too. I sent a chapter in, because you send a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent a proposal into the publishing company with one chapter. And about 6 weeks later, I got an email back that said, thanks, but no thanks.
Oh, wow.
And they give you a critical review. And the review was, it was like, ouch.
Yeah.
Like, is that bad?
Oh, my hard work.
Right, but, it was fair. But they also saw one chapter. So it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I rewrote the proposal. I said, I'm not doing it. I tried, right? And then I sat on it for the summer, and I said, I think they didn't really understand. So I sent it again with a different proposal. I fixed the proposal, and I looked at the criticism, and it was fair. Mm-hmm. And then I sent all 6 chapters. And I got raving reviews back.
Oh,
and
wow.
they said, yes, we want to publish. So, just don't give up. If you think it's something that's worth your voice being heard somewhere in some venue, I'm glad that I took a second shot at it.
Yeah. And also, PhD is huge. Being called doctor, that's so.
It does feel kind of huge.
So preppy, yeah.
Especially at my age.
Makes you feel like powerful.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you thought about it a lot over the summer. Was there anyone who really pushed you to publish this?
Probably my own daughter, and I would say some of my colleagues, because I have 30 plus years of experience in education, and all of them here in Abington. So my daughter's 29 years old and had heard throughout her whole life my stories. You come home at the dinner table with the stories, and I think having been witness to the working full time, leaving here, going to school in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
It just was a long 4 years and a big commitment. So I think just being encouraged to say, go for it. Try it. See if you can do it. So it definitely felt like I got a lot of support from my own peer group and my own family.
All right, focusing a little bit more on the content of your book, you referred to current school systems and curriculums to be sort of outdated and unamusing to students. How do you suppose schools can make a more engaging learning environment for everybody?
Yeah, I would say stick to relevance. I feel like a lot of what we teach now, and even the model that we use to teach is outdated.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant in the world that you are going to be working in the world that you are going to raise families in. Something as simple as a school schedule. We're still on an agricultural calendar, right? That says you get up at the crack of dawn and you go 6 hours and sit in chairs in a classroom, and then you leave and you go work or you go to sports and you study for homework. And I just don't think that's the world that we live in anymore, and that's where you get your best education. I think you two, and we've discussed before, are the best example of internship type opportunities. And in my own profession, I have many degrees, and most of that is classroom work, the best experience, and what really got me the job and the best learned, intelligence was the internship. I had to do a semester of student teaching before I got my degree, the bachelor's degree. In a master's program, you have to do some interning. I think that's what is most important for our students is the relevance. And I think our children, our students aren't seeing how this is relevant in my life and in my
Right.
world. Every time they get into a classroom, when am I going to use this is the first question, I think. So
Yeah.
certainly I would say that's important.
All right, that was great. Thank you.
I have a quote from your book. Headlines indicate Massachusetts students are sad, lonely, poor, unhealthy, drug-addicted, homeless, and at risk of engaging in unsafe behavior. How can schools prevent this, and what are your thoughts on administrators and teachers' role in students' mental health?
Yeah, and that's the crux of the book.
Yeah.
I would say that learning the statistics, that was sort of the math behind the theory, right?
Right.
That it was shocking to me. And I think what's shocking to me is also that we're out there, and you guys were there as well, we're out there celebrating student achievement scores. Right? We're out there saying Massachusetts is the #1 state in the nation. And within that, Abington High School is within the top 4 of the state. Look how awesome we are.
Yeah.
And I think I asked the commissioner, I put out there, are we measuring the right things? So we could have the best MCAS scores or the best SAT scores or the test scores, whatever they might be. And yet, we have a very high suicide rate. We have a very high opioid addiction rate. We have anxiety and depressed and lonely. And, when we take surveys and we're sending students, to hospitals for their mental health, are we measuring the right things? And what are schools doing to support the wellness, emotional wellness of students? And that's cyclical, and I think that I've been here long enough, I've been in education long enough, that, in 1993, education reform was revamped unbelievably, almost to the degree that it was in 1964, with, Lyndon Johnson, and a significant, education reform that said there's no equity in schools. Why are the children of wealthy families getting more? Why are they achieving more? What are the obstacles that get in the way? And so this was a look at what are those obstacles. And I think that for me, as an administrator, more than as a teacher, but I think as an administrator, for 15 years here, I've seen a significant change. So much of my day, you didn't ask me how my day was. I just want to mention that. Much of my day, I was prepared for that. But much of my day it has been more recently about student emotional health. So evaluating, doing risk assessments. How insecure are they? How upset are they? How depressed are they? Do they need to go immediately to a hospital? Can we take care of them in-house, or do they need something more? Do they need outside help and outside counseling? And that's something I didn't learn in school either.
Yeah.
Right.
So, how can schools help? I think we have to get back to thinking about how can you learn best? How can we eliminate or mitigate the obstacles that are in your way to learning? You come to school with those already there. So when you arrive to the door, you're either tired or you're hungry, or something happened at home last night and it was upsetting. You were a victim of trauma in your home, even if it wasn't your trauma. Something happened. You may have a parent who is drug addicted or an alcoholic, or there was violence in the home. You're a victim of domestic assault or domestic violence in the home. I see that more and more and more, and I think there was an era of not our issue.
Yeah.
We educate. You come to school, drop that at the door, right? Because right now you're going to study your math facts, right? And I think we're getting better at understanding what students come to the door with and how we can get them to learn. We can't kind of just power through that.
Yeah.
You really have to navigate that.
Yeah. And in preparation for the commissioner's visit, we talked a lot about how mental health is the one thing that schools should focus on, and everything under that everything else is kind of covered by that umbrella. And everything that we learn and that we do has to do in some way to mental health. I think that that we read this book at a perfect time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it really added a lot of, trying to think of the right word here, but it added a lot of almost like evidence to that argument. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to Abraham Maslow, if you ever studied him in psychology, but this pyramid of you can't really get to a place where you're feeling that you can learn until you feel safe and comfortable and loved, and warm, and you have to have shelter. And if you're hungry or you're cold or how that impacts you're not thinking about how do I study, my chemistry tonight.
Yeah.
So those kind of emotional thoughts and feelings and behaviors, and those are things that I think schools are paying a lot more attention to now out of necessity. And I think we didn't ever really think we had to necessarily. I think you did at elementary school, but at the high school level, I think there was much of it was, oh no, you come here to learn, biology and algebra, geometry, and it's not about how to take care of yourself emotionally.
Yeah, you kind of explained a little bit of what I was asking here, but do you feel the pressure for all these obstacles should be really focused on the schools helping the kids, or should it be more the community and the government helping the kids really overcome these obstacles?
I don't think the schools can do it alone, and I think that was a big part of the book as
Yeah.
well. It was historically, we may have even tried in several different venues, and schools cannot do it alone. I think and it's a bit of a contradiction because we want students to be raised so that you're able to problem solve. We want you to be the students who will go out into the world and say, we know how to fix poverty, right? We've got to get to that place. We have to educate you so that you are able to solve those structural problems. On the other hand, you're still being raised within the structural problems. So I don't think schools alone can fix those kinds of issues that, like an opioid epidemic or poverty, or racism, or the things that students come to school with. We have to navigate them in the sense of we can't ignore them. Yeah. And I think we have to be real about it. And it's sometimes schools want to get in their little box and say, yeah, we teach, this is our curriculum, right? And that's all we do. And that's not true at all. And part of that is on different tiered levels. So, how do you teach students to have ownership of their own behavior and their own skills and I think that's very important that we do that, and I think that's broadly we have to also give them a voice, right? What can they own? What do they want to own? How can they be independent? How can they make independent decisions? Well, you need to develop confidence to do that. Where can you do that? Well, we should offer you opportunities in school to develop that kind of confidence, and that doesn't necessarily happen within the curriculum.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on.
coming.
Sure, of course. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Tune in next week to see an all-new episode of The Weekly Wave.
Make sure to follow us on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Green Wave Gazette.
Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.